All right, so it looks like we have a nice quorum here of participants for today's webinar. So as I mentioned, my name is Jason Dunn. I'm a product marketing manager at Sumo Logic. And today's focus will be cloud security monitoring and analytics with Sumo Logic. I know that's a little bit of a long-winded phrase there for our solution. So I do want to contextualize that. I'll give you a sense of where that sits within kind of our various security solutions within our security intelligence portfolio. And without further ado, I'm going to just jump into a couple of quick slides, and then I do want to for sure leave 10 to 12 minutes at the end for what I consider to be the fun part of actually really showing the live platform and having it be interactive and showing you in a more tangible sense what our platform capabilities are. And then we'll have time at the end, probably about 4 to 5 minutes at the end for Q&A. So feel free to just pop your question at any time throughout the session, pop your question into the Q&A section, and then I can kind of talk through each of those, or if need be, we can connect you with the right teammate. But 9 times out of 10, it's a question that I can address and we can talk through live, and that would be helpful for others to hear as well. So just to give folks a little sense here of the overarching Sumo Logic security intelligence solutions. So the security intelligence solutions at Sumo are currently comprised of 4 core solutions. So what you see there on the 2 left columns here are audit and compliance and cloud security monitoring and analytics. Both of those exist on the, our continuous intelligence platform, which is what I'll be showing today within the demo. So as you're seeing the demo, you can also envision, and in fact, we had a whole PCI compliance webinar that we ran for several months in 2020, if you were able to join for those, where nothing should look too foreign to you. It's actually something that has evolved very slightly since then, as far as what the construct of the new style of dashboards are, but more or less there should be familiarity if you've seen that before. And then Cloud SIM being the 3rd column. So that's its own dedicated webinar, which my counterpart, Dana Torgerson, runs, and he can show you the user experience, the flow, and really demo that environment. And the 4th edition here, which is an exciting addition for us, is Cloud SOAR. And that in of itself is also its own webinar that comes in by way of very recent acquisition of DF Labs, which is based out of Italy. And that's really focused on the response component. So actually that frees up some time for today, where we'll talk a little bit less about response than we have in the past, and leave some time for that as its own webinar. Just as a quick overarching sense of what our platform kind of capabilities are, just from a pure numbers perspective. So we have over 2,100 customers utilizing the platform today, 27 exabytes of data being scanned monthly, 800 plus petabytes of data that's analyzed daily, and then 1.6 quadrillion events scanned daily. So to give you a sense of just the overall kind of overarching sense of how much data is really being run through our platform, and that number really continues to grow every day. The kind of the right column here, I'll kind of show, not tell. I think these are kind of these broader concepts that we'll weave in throughout the presentation today. But one that I probably won't touch on as much, or I'll just mention it here instead, is cloud economics consumption models. So we do have a flexible credits-based pricing model, which is what allows our customers to really make decisions on the fly around how you actually want to spend those credits, burn those credits down, and really reorient based on what a given set of new use cases might be. So just want to have a quick shout out for that, but the rest we will cover and will be specific with each of these bullets, but just want to give you a quick sense of kind of what our offering is as we progress through. So just to jump ahead here, so as we think about kind of what some of our core customer challenges are that we tend to see, a lot of it is really going to be lack of cloud support with an existing solution that our customers might be using, Secondly is limited visibility in line with that, kind of more, limited sense of data sources that you're able to bring in. So that's going to also limit the visibility and the types of insights that are pulled from those data sources. And then thirdly would just be limited analytics. So let's actually think about this in terms of how Sumo solves for those core challenges. So Sumo itself is cloud native. We are and were built in from the beginning in AWS. So we're very much scalable based on what our customer requirements are. And that also connects back to how we go about actually, what we allow our customers to ingest as well. So we allow our customers to ingest any number of types of cloud data sources. That could be AWS, Azure, GCP, and it could be a very diverse array of types. So it could be firewall, database, identity access, CDN data, et cetera. There's quite a variety. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, that really connects back to the increased visibility component. So we'll talk about, monitoring and analytics and what the kind of breakout is for each. But because we're able to bring in both that cloud and on-premise data, that's what allows you to really have that kind of overarching umbrella look at all of your data sources and really have a better sense through that. And then thirdly, and we'll be specific with this today in the demo, is security-focused analytics. So analytical capabilities that are really designed for security engineering teams to be able to process, investigate, and respond. And like I said, I'll probably de-emphasize respond for today, but really focus on process and investigation and kind of what the levels of granularity are that come in with that. So here we can see kind of the overarching architecture of our platform. So as I mentioned, there are quite a few types of data sources that we typically would see customers bringing in. That could be apps. And when we say apps, we mean external products that you are building for your customers. So if that is something you offer, in some cases, maybe you're a consulting shop or other situations where you don't actually have that, but just want to call that out for our customers that are maybe themselves a SaaS company, for example, that offers that to their customers. And then secondly would be SaaS IT. So this is where we can talk about, your Zoom, Zscaler, Okta data that maybe your IT team is managing, and you want to be able to bring that data into the Sumo platform. And then multi-cloud. So if, for example, you're using GCP and AWS, you're able to really ingest that data simultaneously. And then really any example of on-premises data as well. That's a situation where you would just basically run an installed collector and really get into the weeds of how you'd be specific with bringing that data in. And that's going to really allow you to do two different types of analysis in the broadest sense. So let me just get this chat to clear. So we think of it, so we're talking about cloud security monitoring and analytics here, and we think of monitoring and analytics as very much, they're very conjoined, and there are a lot of parallels, and they use a lot of the same types of dashboards, queries that kind of underpin them. But when we talk about security monitoring, it's really about surfacing those critical security issues via an overarching view of a dashboard and alert. And I'll show a couple examples of that in the demo. And then when we talk about analytics, security analytics, that's where we're getting very specific, and this will connect into the right column in a moment. But this is where we get very specific to each of the use cases that you're designing around. And you can really allow, our app catalog within our cloud security monitoring and analytics offering within our app catalog, we generally will offer 1 to 2 of the monitoring dashboards and then 5 to 7 of the analytics dashboards to really allow you to focus in, because once you understand what the core security incidents are that are commonly occurring, then you typically will have a better sense after you look at that, the monitoring view, you have a better sense of that in the analytics view to really get more specific. And when I say more specific, I'm really alluding to the ability to analyze with more granularity. So that's where you can really get into the device level, IP level, network level, database level, et cetera. So yeah, just a broader view here. So I'm going to spend time on this AWS security overview dashboard. So I'm not going to talk too much in detail about it today, but this is what the platform looks like. And I said today, but I just mean within the scope of this slide. So I'll focus on it in a few minutes so we can get more specific. But I just want to show you what the platform, in a tangible sense, what the platform looks like. Each of these panels has its own query that really drives the analysis behind them. And the kind of core features that we'll be able to get into in some level of detail in the demo is, out of the box app catalog content. So really you can get, as long as you're bringing that data in already into Sumo Logic, then you can really have an app up and live very quickly. Subqueries, lookup tables, built-in feeds to really provide more context, whether it's from GeoLookup or built-in CrowdStrike threat intel feed. All of these kind of tools in your toolkit allow you to run your own analysis too, if you want to start modifying and customizing this out of the box content. And then raw text searching is really that deep granularity that you'll get is if you know already what you're looking for, maybe you don't even need a dashboard. You build your own queries and just really get specific with how you set up those queries. Field extraction rules, I'll just call at the end here. That's what's really going to allow you to be consistent with how you bring in various fields into your existing instance of your Sumo Logic, how you utilize Sumo Logic on a daily basis. And because you're using field extraction rules, you can be consistent with how you bring in those fields into various dashboards across many dashboards. So that's where you can have that consistency of the analysis. So yeah, when we talk about prioritization of threats, so that kind of flow I mentioned, process, investigate, respond. So this is really the process and prioritize piece. This is where we talk about really the ability to generate actionable security insights. So that's where you can leverage all of your on-premises, hybrid, cloud data. And really, because you're surfacing those most relevant insights, then you can get more granular and really pivot out into individual queries and really run those deeper investigations. This is an image of a query, which we'll be able to show live too, but you can really modify, very similar to SQL or any variation on SQL, you can modify and really, run like set up an outlier that's time slice or account by, and then transpose into the correct rows in order to really run that granular analysis. And as I said, I won't spend as much time on this today, but the ability to accelerate response, I mean, you really can do that within our core platform. We'll also spend time on the SOAR webinar as well in the next few days to actually show the ways in which that can be performed within the kind of larger security intelligence portfolio. And and this analysis of user activity really connects back to all of these, but I would say especially prioritization and investigation, where you can actually pivot out at the individual user level and show within like this Azure data, for example, what an individual user is actually performing, and then kind of going about the analysis from there. So with that, I'm going to jump into the live demo. I'm going to spend about 10 minutes. We'll see, ideally 10 minutes within the core platform, showing you everything we just described, but then getting into the specifics of like Palo Alto Networks data, Linux data, et cetera. And then we'll kind of jump into Q&A after that. And also just, I'll show this again at the end, but just we do have some reference resources that I think could be really valuable. I think I saw someone raise their hand. We'll do Q&A in 9 minutes, hopefully, and then that's when we can address things as they come in. So let me just jump over into the demo environment. I may need to log back in. Yeah, it didn't like. So let me just stop sharing for a moment. And I will log back into our demo environment, and I can show you the live environment so we can get into the details here. Okay, excellent. So Just a quick lay of the land. Now we're down to, I'm going to try to keep it really tight here. So now we're down to 7 minutes. So I'm just going to be really quick and precise here. I'll just say, if you're not familiar with the platform, generally speaking, and this is your first session with us, I would just call out quickly that essentially everything that you'd ever want to do from a custom perspective will be within the new tab, similar to like Google Chrome, really not reinventing the wheel with tab management too much here. So new log searches, metrics, traces. Today, we're mostly spending time on new log search and new dashboard, and a little bit of explore, but mostly those are the two call outs. And so that's for custom. If you're doing something more out of the box, you would really be mostly doing it within app catalog. And then if you go to the security specific section, this is what we'll spend the majority of our time on today, is the cloud security monitoring and analytics out of the box content. So if we just click into Linux, for example, you can preview the dashboards here, and you can add the data source. So if just for simplicity's sake, you could actually just do a wildcard with the asterisks, and that will show all Linux data. Mind you, that's excluding, like, if you're using Alpine Linux and you're just calling your data source Alpine, then you would need to account for that. But if we're just, for simplicity's sake, we could just wildcard that, and that would be one way to kind of like very quickly show your teammates an example of what the dashboard could be, just for an example. Try to get this bar out of the way. Okay, so these two, I'll just quickly show, and these are actually kind of quote unquote non-new style, I guess old style dashboards. So, but in any event, they can be very easily ported over to the new dashboard. This is an overview. So if you're using AWS security data, this is an overview of all of your AWS security data. And then in this case, it is specifically broken out for like guard duty, VPC flow. We'll get into more detail on VPC flow later, in fact, but just want to quickly call out some of the visualizations here that are helpful to see in a more live demo environment. So the pink triangles actually indicate something that's broken out of the outlier. And so because it's broken out by time slice, it's probably not going to be a great example to show this piece, because this is an example where there's probably just no data and it's just breaking out with one example of that. But if we look here, we can see the brown area is actually the expected range. And then the pink triangle is kind of just breaking out of that expected range. That's kind of how the outlier operator functions, and can be really helpful for custom content as well. And here below, we can see anti-malware event history. So no significant spikes, but you do see, these ongoing quarantine events throughout. So just something to keep an eye on. You can actually adjust the time slice as you move through each of these. The investigation response console in the past, I've actually done the whole flow and shown within Slack how the webhook performs. Again, I think we're going to shift our focus over time more towards SOAR taking on that activity. But just for your own understanding and awareness, we have many webhook integrations with PagerDuty, Slack, ServiceNow, etc., that would allow you to actually perform like a quarantine from within Slack, according to what you see within this investigation response console. So just something to be aware of as we kind of navigate through. And you can see these kind of, just for visualization understanding, like as we run these stacked charts, you can actually see this interesting breakout of the CloudTrail spike in activity, where it's really throughout the scope of this visualization, it's pretty consistent as to how much each of these, Zscaler is maybe a little bit larger than the others, but for the most part, you see consistency. And then it's interesting when you look here, we actually see CloudTrail is breaking out for this kind of 5-minute time slice. So just might be something to investigate further. And then I actually want to show, so the whole rest of the demo, the next 3 to 4 minutes, I'm just going to show what's available out of the box, like I mentioned, from a cloud security monitoring and analytics kind of filter or lens. So, and these are all in the new dashboard format. The beauty of the new dashboards is they allow you to actually bring in metrics as well. So you can start blending in metrics with the with the existing logs that you're actually showing. And actually, before I do that, I do want to just quickly show an example where if I just click into just so people understand the flow and the UX. This is how I'd actually modify a query. So like if I don't like this time slice, I can very quickly just adjust that and have like a little bit less granularity. And there you can see we actually, that example where the outlier is breaking out, now we have 10 minutes time slicing, and that's going to allow for the thresholds to be a little bit more averaged out over a larger time slice, which then gives you a more interesting look at like the outliers probably are better perspective on it being a true outlier. So just a quick call out of like how we would run a breakout query from each of these. So yeah, so this is kind of an overview of Linux data and how we might look at successful logins versus failed logins is looking at the actual account level. So this is more of a monitoring view versus if we look at, this CloudTrail monitoring view, similarly, we're looking at the kind of user level, seeing added users, and there's kind of this gradual downward trend, an upward trend of removed users, and then this kind of view of threats over time, and then kind of a drop off with the most recent data. No outliers actually shown here. There would be pink outliers to indicate that. But where it gets interesting is we can say, if we actually pivot out and we kind of run cross analysis, then we can get into the login activity, and we're getting a little bit more granular here. And we can show individual users for each of these, where each of these are indicating authentication events, access denied, etc. And the failed API calls attached to each of these. So, I mean, interestingly, we don't really see any significant like spikes or changes, but that may also just mean that it's something that we want to keep an eye on over time and not really have any pauses or breaks in the action. Like if we saw a spike, we would then pivot out and look at those individual queries. But in reality, it's very consistent. So it's just something we want to have an eye on over time. And then if we look at VPC flow traffic direction monitoring, this is where we can see like the trends over time of the accepts versus rejects. And we see much higher accepts over a 60-minute time span than rejects, which is probably what we expect. If rejects were kind of outpacing accepts, then that's probably something we'd want to drill down further into. And then we can see kind of the outbound top 10 source IP. So each of these IPs is then linked to an amount of data that's being brought in over this last 60-minute time span, and that might be something we want to drill into further. And just in the interest of time, I'm going to jump ahead. Looks like we have a good amount of Q&A coming in, so I want to make sure I leave time for that. So Palo Alto Networks data, we also allow for we have a lot of customers using Palo Alto data to take a closer look at their environments. And here we can see, and I would probably ignore all of these drop-offs. This is just indicating that they're still processing the data in the last 5 minutes. So you can ignore this drop-off for each of them. In fact, we could just lop that off to have better indicators, but we do see spikes in activity for each of these traffic patterns, or at least for this panel, we see a spike around the 9:35 a.m. mark. So it might be something we want to drill into deeper, and we can actually see the individual IP level activity. We also see unencrypted default ports. So probably every single one of these, I mean, port 80, we might expect that, but for some of the others like port 23, et cetera, it might be something you want to drill into deeper. And then just in the interest of time, I'll also show, this is where we can actually show like individual members. So let's see if we can do just breakouts for each of these. So if we want to do like just an example, I'm trying to see if we can find a good member. In any case, we see these individual, let's see if I think it's just called one for this member or dash. In any case, we see this kind of breakout of user level activity. Yeah, so it's just labeled as dash, so not a super descriptive name, but it does give you the ability to break out each of these, and then we can look at individual computers that are tied to that. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to stop sharing here and jump back into the Q&A because it looks like we have some good Q&A coming in. But thanks so much for I'll actually flash the screen back here. But really appreciate you folks hopping on, and I'm just gonna share a couple of resources as I kind of dig into the Q&A. So just 1 second here. So it looks like, let's see, Chen Lang asked if we have security module for GCP. If not, when do we expect rollout? I'm going to ask you to ping me separately in order to get a more specific product roadmap answer for that. The short answer is we do have existing, so let me just pop out of the screen 1 second. We do have existing GCP content. It's not going to be specific yet to security, but we do have a ton of GCP content that you could very easily modify in order to map to security use cases. So like Google Cloud IAM would be a great example of something where you could take these existing dashboards and start building out. I mean, even this one is already security use case, but it just depends a little bit on what you're trying to do. I would say either build it out custom based on the app catalog, or let's ping me on email and I'll connect you with the product manager for the better kind of roadmap discussion. Tirthankar was asking, how is the expected range determined for the Brown area and the VPC volume traffic? So where is VPC flow? It really could be for any of them. Let's see if I can find it again. Oh yeah, so that was here. That's just that's modifiable here. So you can just do a drop down. You can look at the broader view. So hopefully that's helpful. So yeah, you can just expand the amount of time through that. Jeff Shu was asking, how do you look up the historical activity of an IP, such as from a specific IP, there's a login attempt, CloudTrail IPs from that IP, etc. So the short answer, I mean, this could really be its own 30-minute session, but I'll just quickly cover that by saying, that's where you would do kind of the user level breakouts. So in this particular example, you would just add a template variable for an IP, and that would allow you to look at historical data broken out depending on what the data source is. So you mentioned CloudTrail. So you could just use the existing CloudTrail app and then just add a template variable for a type of IP that you're looking for and just make sure that that's set up. Or you may be able to run that just straight out of the box. So that's a great question. Any built-in benchmarks? So yes, we have, so you mentioned CIS, AWS Foundation benchmark. So that's one example. We also have, I mean, we have a ton of benchmarking that we're doing. That's really its own product line. So it really depends. I would say I'm going to actually give you my email as well. And let's connect you up with that product manager to get you set up with the right, because I mean, there are a dozen different dashboards that would align with that depending on what your interests are. And then also you asked, Jeff Shu was asking, looking up on AWS CloudTrail actions in the past 1 year. Yes, as long as your retention period is 365 days, you can expand the panel to that. And then anonymous attendee asked for copy of slides. We actually don't have like a public repository for these slides. If I can kind of give you a scrubbed version of the deck, and I'll just share my email as well. If you want to just ping me, I can send you something. And then Sam Nolly asked, does the system alert when a specific source stops sending logs? How does it determine a system stops syncing versus turned off? That's a pretty nuanced question. We can alert on any of these panels have queries behind them, which you could set an outlier alert on, and not just outlier, it could be any type of trigger for that alert. As far as the source stopping sending logs, I think the way there's a simple way to do it. There's a complex way to do it. I think the simplest way to do it is to say, hey, if we're not seeing data in the last, let's say 15 minutes, that's where it's for sure, let's say it's for sure a log source where you expect to see data coming in, then that could trigger an alert of just like the threshold could just be set to 0. That would be one way to do it. But a lot of different ways to approach that. So yeah, just feel free to ping me, Sam. I'll send you my email individually, and we'll think more about that. But in any case, hopefully that's helpful, Sam. I'm gonna actually call it here in the interest of time. Nelson quickly asked, are we compliant with SOC 2 and ISO 27001 standards? We're definitely SOC compliant, and I'm happy to share that content. Jeff Shu asked, look up any AWS users CloudTrail actions in the past 1 year. Oh yeah, we did answer that one already. So cool. So thanks so much. sumologic.com/sign-up would be where you can hop in and just get started on a free trial today. sales@sumologic.com if you have follow-up questions. Feel free to ping me for anyone that I sent my email to, or if anyone needs a further question, feel free to ping me. Thanks so much for the time today. I'm actually going to stop sharing and end webinar here, but there'll also be a recording available. So if folks want to see the slides that way, they're also free to do so. Thanks so much and have a great rest of the day. Cheers.